My whole life was undergoing a change. That is, I was realizing that television was not where I really wanted to be. I wanted to be in the theater.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a friend who was then writing a play that I liked a lot, but he hadn't completed it yet. A little play called Two for the Seesaw.
Bill Gibson.
Bill Gibson. So Bill Gibson, was an old friend, said, I need some money. Can you get me any? And I said, well, what do you got? He said, well, and we started talking, and he told me, he said, I wrote a dance narrative once for two women between Helen Keller and Annie Sullivan. I said, what do you mean, a dance narrative? He said, well, and he began to tell me the story. And we sat down with a yellow pad, and we sort of sketched it out. I said, I'll get you $500 for this in a minute. Took it to NBC, and they said, no. You know, who wants to see a deaf-blind girl? I took it to CBS, and they said no. Marty Manulis, at this point, the future producer of Playhouse 90, had come to New York and said to me, do you have anything that I can use in the early shows? Because I want you to do 4. I knew by that point that I could only do 4 because I was going to start my first film produced by Fred Coe. So I said, well, I have this script. And he said, let me see it. I sent it out to him, and a telegram came back saying $10,000 on its way to Bill Gibson. And Bill made 10,000 and then 10,000 again when it was replayed. It was a big hit on television. It was one of the very earliest Playhouse 90s.
What about the casting on that? Did you have a lot to do with that?
And on Playhouse 90?
Yeah.
I did, up to a point. The clear passion of this was East Coast, West Coast. And now we were going to move to the West Coast to do Playhouse 90 because that's where all the movie stars were. And we had Teresa Wright, played Annie Sullivan, and Patty McCormick. Akim Tamirov played the head of the Perkins Institute. Katie Bard Manulis, a former Broadway actress.
Fine actress.
Fine actress. Played the mother, etc. And we did it. And bing, the phones just started lining up at CBS. And by this point, again, just to express one aspect of it, none of us realized the potency yet of this medium. You know, how many homes it was going to, what kind of effect it was having on people, and so forth. But when finally Playhouse 90 went on, by that time there were an enormous number of sets going in the country, and people watched that show, and the responses were just tremendous.
And doing a 90-minute show was a lot more difficult than doing the 1-hour show.
It was a lot more difficult and also a lot easier because by then CBS had built a facility entirely for television, while all the time that we were doing Philco, we were doing it out of an old radio studio here at Rockefeller Center. So suddenly we were in this enormous facility out in California where you could have 7 cameras if you wanted. I mean, it was. I won't get into that whole question of how do you release a camera from one set and get to the next one, but it was an enormous part of how we had to function back here. And then back there, out there by that point, you could have 7 cameras, 8 cameras, whatever. Didn't matter. Let's go back to my friend Bill Gibson of the needing some money. He had written The Miracle Worker, and now he finished a play called Two for the Seesaw. And he had this very fancy agent who said, everybody on Broadway is going to want to produce this play. Well, she sent it to one producer after another. Every one of them turned it down. And we were all amazed. And finally, Bill said to me something like, well, what the hell do we do now? And I said, I think we give it to Fred Coe, you know? And I sent it, I gave it to Fred over a weekend. He was going to Bucks County. Came back on Monday and said, we're doing this play. And he sent off a telegram to Henry Fonda down on the Riviera. Who was having either one of his honeymoons or one of his divorces, I don't know which. And we sent him the script, and he wired back saying, I'm yours. Now we start looking for the young lady. And lo and behold, Anne Bancroft comes back into our lives. While we were on the road with Two for the Seesaw, struggling to get that play into shape, Bill Gibson, who was now just knocked out by Anne Bancroft, just thought she was the best actress in the world, said to me, you know, I think I'm going to make The Miracle Worker into a play. And I said, oh, Bill, you're crazy. And much more than that, I said.
Yes.
Out of your mind. And no, he said, I think so. We'll see. Well, we came in with Seesaw. It was a big hit. Anne Bancroft became a star overnight.
And it was a two-character drama.
Two-character drama, Henry Fonda and Anne Bancroft. Bill went back up to Stockbridge, which is where we both lived part of the time. He lives all the time. And a few months later, I got a play script of The Miracle Worker. So Annie played on Broadway for about a year in Seesaw, and then was replaced by Lee Grant. And we started rehearsing The Miracle Worker.
Did Henry Fonda stay in the play?
No, Henry Fonda didn't like that part. He thought that somehow we had led him astray by having such a great response from the woman, and that the man was not as strong a part as the woman. So
because she got all the reviews, didn't she?
Yes. He left after 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
But we had then Dana Andrews came in,
Mm-hmm.
and a number of movie stars played it from then on. Well, what it came about was that United Artists saw this hit play. Again, it was peculiar. We couldn't get a good theater from the Schuberts because they kept saying, who wants to see a play about a deaf blind girl? So we ended up at a theater that no longer exists in New York called the Playhouse. But Bill, so boom, it opens, big hit, big hit, just zap, selling out like crazy. And United Artists wanted to buy it. Well, after an experience of the sort I had on Left-Handed Gun, I just, and Fred was also equally indignant about that. We said to United Artists, if you guys buy it, this is what we want.
Director's cut?
Director's final cut, not director's cut. Anne Bancroft plays the lead, not Audrey Hepburn, who wanted to play it. Bill Gibson writes the screenplay, and Fred co-produces it. And we do it in New York. Aside from that, fellas, it's your movie. And they met all those conditions.
They accepted all that.
We shot it down here on 23rd Street, in the, I think, High Brown Studio.
Mm-hmm. Did the film differ very much from the stage production?
Not enough.
Mm-hmm.
That's unfortunately. That was my lack of experience with the potency and eloquence of cinema. I didn't use the medium enough, so I allowed too many words to remain from the Broadway play, where things had to be enunciated that on film you could see.
Mm-hmm.
So I left some things in there that I dearly wish were not in there.
You would have liked to have had more visuals.
Yeah, and I wish I'd understood the visual medium better, but I didn't. And I'll tell you a quick story about the end of it, because I shot the end of it thinking it's a very potent scene. They go out to the pump and they pump the water, and suddenly the association that the physical experience and sensory experience had a name, that a word existed. And so I thought, well, it's so potent on the stage, I'm just going to set up a camera and shoot it exactly as if they'd done it on the stage. I did that. I looked at the dailies the next night, and I thought I was going to die. It was just terrible. And I said,
why? I mean, what about it?
Because I suddenly imposed a kind of proscenial vision onto something where I wanted to have all of the stuff that I was talking about with John Kennedy. I mean, I wanted to be into the eyes. I wanted to be into the water and the hand. And I said, we're coming back tomorrow and reshoot this whole scene. We're going to do it, and then we're going to do it. And I just broke it down into moment by moment and covered it and covered it and covered it. I said, when we cut this together, this is going to be dynamite. And indeed it is dynamite. It is a
Yes.
very, very potent scene based on using the medium. And see, I couldn't do it in live television when I did it on Playhouse 90 because we couldn't move the cameras off that about 160 plane, you know? I mean, they could, otherwise they'd be photographing each other because you were on the air simultaneously. But in film, it's one camera, one time, and you can move it anywhere you want. And that's what that's where I hadn't made the bold enough step yet. But I sure made it the next day.
It's a powerful film.
Yeah, it's powerful.